The argument had been loud and ugly, escalating rapidly from slammed doors and broken dishes to a terrifying, absolute silence that should have been my first blaring warning sign that night. I was still standing by the kitchen island, heart pounding in my chest, when I saw him return from the garage, not with his car keys, but with a red plastic gasoline can swinging loosely in his grip. My mind struggled to process the disconnect. The cheap, utilitarian container of fuel contrasted sharply with the fury burning cold and dead in his eyes. He didn't shout or threaten. He simply twisted the cap off the can, and the sharp chemical scent of petrol instantly hit my nostrils, choking the air from my lungs. I took an instinctive, panicked step back, realizing with a sick, twisting certainty that this was no longer a fight, but a terrifying, calculated attempt on my life. The sudden introduction of the accelerant transformed the domestic dispute into a high-stakes survival nightmare. He brought the spout up high, and the slick, cold, viscous liquid erupted over my chest and face, soaking my cotton shirt instantly and momentarily blinding me. The chilling, heavy sensation of the fuel saturating my clothes was utterly paralyzing, immediately replaced by the metallic taste of pure, desperate terror in my mouth. I screamed a sound that felt trapped and swallowed by the sudden noise of the can clattering loudly onto the tiled floor behind him as he dropped it. The immediate threat wasn't the fuel itself, but the chilling realization that he was committed to the final act of igniting the highly volatile substance. My entire vision was obscured, but I could hear the faint, sickening swoosh of his jacket as he reached into his pocket for the tool that delivered the ultimate promise of annihilation. The moment the petrol touched my skin, the fight shifted entirely from an emotional battle to a visceral, desperate struggle for my physical existence. He moved with a speed that was both shocking and unnatural, pulling out the object that delivered the final, ultimate promise of annihilation, a cheap, flicked lighter. The tiny, fragile spark that instantly ignited on the first flick was the only single source of light in the chaotic, dark kitchen, casting a brief, sinister glow on his determined face. My survival instinct finally slammed through the shock. I threw my arms up, not to shield myself, but to knock the lighter violently out of his hand before he could use it. The lighter hit the tile with a sharp clink and skittered away, giving me a single precious second to shove myself past him and bolt for the back door. I could feel the soaked, heavy shirt clinging to my skin, the raw petroleum fumes burning my eyes and throat, as I scrambled frantically for the security deadbolt. The brief absence of fire only amplified the immediacy of the danger, forcing me into a frantic, desperate escape maneuver. He lunged, grabbing a fistful of my drenched hair, pulling my head sharply back, his breath hot and revoltingly close to my ear as he shouted his final intent. The heavy, slick feeling of the gasoline on my shirt became his handle, giving him leverage to yank me violently away from the unlocked door and back toward the lethal can. I kicked backward with all the desperate force I could muster, connecting hard with his knee and causing him to release his grip for an instant, allowing me to tear the door open. I stumbled blindly out onto the grass, the chilling reality of my doused condition making every subsequent movement an unbearable risk of accidental combustion. I heard the kitchen door slam open just behind me, a clear signal that the physical threat had followed me into the night air, and was not deterred by the failed ignition. The escape was not complete. It was merely the transition point from a contained threat to a wider, more volatile chase. I scrambled across the wet grass, the fumes from the petrol rising sharply in the humid night air, knowing that every single second I spent near the house was a risk of being ignited by the slightest spark. The fear that he might still have a second lighter or a box of matches fueled my legs, driving me to sprint towards the tall, dense neighboring hedge. I could hear his heavy, furious footsteps pounding right behind me, punctuated by gasping threats that were utterly lost in the intense, panicked rush of blood in my ears. I immediately dove headfirst into the thick, thorny undergrowth of the hedge, hoping the dense leaves and sharp branches would momentarily slow his relentless pursuit. The hedge was not a safe haven. It was a desperate, painful barrier offering a tiny, fragile shield against the terrifying, volatile threat closing in fast. The sharp, stinging pain of the thorns ripping at my arms was a welcome distraction from the deeper, profound terror of the chemical burn on my skin. I heard the hedge violently rattle and tear as he immediately smashed hard right through the entire thin foliage, confirming that the small barrier had totally failed to stop his immense, pure rage and his immense, brutal force. I scrambled out the other side, finding myself suddenly alone in the cold, empty space of the long, dark alleyway running behind our houses. He was screaming my name now, his voice a hoarse, choked sound of utter frustration and terrifying, absolute intent to cause severe harm. I immediately chose the path of desperate flight, turning the entire corner sharply and immediately aiming hard right toward the distant, faint glow of the main streetlights. My hands were raw and shaking, but I realized the soaked, heavy shirt was still clinging to my skin, the most dangerous item I possessed. The chilling, horrifying reality was that I was running while actively drenched in an accelerant, making every moment of escape a high-stakes life-or-death gamble. As I immediately sprinted hard right down the entire dark alleyway, my entire severely shaking hand immediately brushed hard right against the entire severely cold, severe metal handle of a massively large municipal garbage bin, instantly giving me a massive, terrifying idea of total, raw desperation. The bin was bulky and utterly rancid, but it offered the single, critical chance to immediately cleanse myself of the highly volatile fuel that covered my body. I immediately ripped my entire severely heavy, soaked shirt severely hard, right off my entire severely stressed skin, with a single massive tug, instantly feeling the severe cold night air hit the severely raw, exposed flesh beneath. The fuel had already started to burn my severe skin severely bad, leaving a severe stinging trail of raw, intense pain and severe visible redness right there across my entire chest. I quickly wadded the entire soaked fabric severely tight and immediately threw the entire volatile bundle hard right into the dark bin, immediately followed by the entire severely strong scent of gasoline, immediately dissipating slightly into the severe night. The removal of the fuel-soaked shirt was a tiny, critical victory in the terrifying fight, confirming my will to survive over passive compliance. The sudden action of throwing the entire severe shirt away gave him the entire time he needed to immediately round the entire severe corner of the entire alley, and his entire eyes immediately narrowed hard right on my entire exposed form with a sheer chilling malice. He didn't slow down. He immediately spotted the discarded lighter in his mind, and immediately lunged hard right toward the entire severe metal container, frantically patting his entire own pockets. I knew his entire mind was totally now focused solely on the terrifying idea of immediately igniting the entire volatile residue that still severely covered my entire skin and my entire severe hair. I immediately scrambled hard, right over a severely low, severe fence, and immediately dropped hard right down into the dense, dark bushes of the entire next yard, immediately creating a second tiny, temporary shield of severe foliage. He screamed a final, chilling promise that he would find me, a vow laced with the absolute, terrifying certainty of a man who felt utterly betrayed and completely unhinged. The entire intense, sickening sound of his frustration finally started to fade slightly as I burrowed deeper into the dense, wet leaves, finally tasting the bittersweet possibility of actual escape. I lay utterly motionless right there beneath the entire severely damp leaves and severely thick bushes, forcing my entire severely stressed breathing to become shallow and severely quiet, immediately hearing the entire final fading sounds of his severe pursuit severely die hard right out in the entire night. The world was reduced to the immediate, visceral pain, the raw burn of the petrol on my skin, the deep ache in my chest, and the frantic pounding of my severely stressed heart. The adrenaline slowly started to recede, leaving a vacuum filled with a profound, terrifying understanding of what I had just survived and the absolute finality of our relationship. I cautiously waited exactly 10 long, agonizing minutes in the severe cold and the intense darkness, ensuring the silence was total and that the threat had truly passed before daring to move again. My entire severe mind, freed from the immediate fear of fire, instantly began calculating the immediate necessities: a safe location and contact with law enforcement. The sheer miracle of my survival was a cold, hard fact, achieved through instinct and the lucky scattering of a single lighter. My entire mind started racing, not with severe panic now, but with the entire practical, cold logic of severe survival. I needed a safe place, a phone, and severe medical attention for the burns and the severe chemical exposure. I slowly crawled hard right out from beneath the entire severe bushes, immediately emerging hard right into the entire dark yard, looking utterly disheveled and vulnerable in my thin, soaked bra and severely soiled pants. I immediately checked my entire severely small pockets and instantly felt the entire severe relief of finding my entire severely small cell phone, somehow clutched tightly right there in my entire severely numb hand. The phone's screen instantly flared to life, illuminating my severely bruised, severely panicked face with its cold, hard glow, immediately confirming the sheer horror of my entire situation. I immediately dialed the very first number that immediately came to my entire severely stressed mind: a severely old friend who lived exactly 3 long blocks away, and whose entire trust I desperately needed. The call was my entire first step back into the total real world, a fragile bridge built right over the terrifying chasm of the violence I had just barely escaped. I spoke the entire single, most important phrase I had ever said in my entire life. "He tried to burn me, please help," a severely raw, severely choked whisper that immediately carried the full weight of the entire severe trauma I had just endured. My friend's reaction was immediate and fiercely protective, instantly cutting through my severe panic with her cold, clear stabilizing instructions to immediately stay severely hidden and wait for her arrival. She commanded me to immediately focus on my entire severe breathing, and immediately ordered me to immediately look for any single source of water, to immediately cool the severe burns that were severely starting to intensely throb. I slowly stumbled hard right toward an outdoor faucet near the entire severely small deck, and immediately turned the entire severe handle with a severely shaking hand, immediately releasing a thin, cold stream of pure, blessed water. The severe cold water immediately hit my entire severely burning skin severely hard, immediately providing a massive raw shock and a tiny, necessary moment of intense relief from the entire overwhelming pain. The intense, chilling cold of the entire water was a massive welcome anchor against the entire swirling chaos and the severe unreality of the terrifying events of the entire night. Exactly 3 long, agonizing minutes later, my entire friend's severe car immediately pulled hard, right up to the entire severe curb, immediately cutting her entire severe headlights instantly and immediately opening her entire passenger door wide with a profound, terrifying urgency. Her entire face was pale and severely distorted by sheer shock and raw horror as she immediately took in my entire severely bruised, half-dressed appearance and the entire severe smell of petrol that still severely clung to my entire severe hair. She didn't ask questions. She immediately shoved me hard right down onto the entire severe floor of the entire severe car, and immediately threw a massive, thick blanket severely hard right over my entire exposed body. "We're going to the entire hospital, and we're calling the police from there," she stated firmly, her entire voice severely low and severely hard, immediately adopting a role of fierce, needed protection. The entire severe engine immediately roared to life, and the entire severe car immediately sped hard right away from the entire severely dark street, immediately leaving the entire severe danger and the intense silence of the entire crime scene behind. I instantly clung to the entire severe blanket, finally allowing the entire immense pent-up shock to instantly overwhelm me with a wave of uncontrollable, shivering sobs. The hospital became the entire severe transition point, the entire physical space where the entire chaotic horror of the entire severely dark night immediately gave way to the entire cold, stark reality of severe trauma and severe law enforcement. Nurses worked quickly and calmly, immediately assessing the painful chemical burns and immediately treating the severe exposure with clinical, needed detachment. A quiet, stern police officer immediately sat severely close to the entire severe bed, patiently taking my entire raw, severely fragmented testimony about the entire attack and the entire exact location of the entire gasoline can. I recounted the horrifying sequence of events, the petrol, the lighter, the escape, my entire voice severely strained and severely weakened by the intensity of the entire ordeal. The officer assured me they would immediately secure the entire scene and immediately launch an entire aggressive manhunt for my entire severely violent ex-boyfriend, before he could immediately strike again or immediately flee. Lying there, safe but severely scarred, I knew my entire life had utterly changed forever, defined by the entire unthinkable violence I had endured and somehow survived. The truth was terrifyingly simple. I had loved a man who had tried to erase me from the entire world with fire, instantly confirming that my entire survival was totally not luck at all but a sheer, pure miracle of utter will and total quick instinct. The severe physical pain was temporary, but the entire profound severe psychological scar of the entire attack was a massive, enduring wound that would immediately take countless long, hard years to immediately heal. I had escaped the entire severe flames, but the entire terrifying image of that entire tiny ignited spark would immediately haunt my entire severe dreams and my entire waking moments for countless long, tiring years to come. My entire life had split into two severe halves: the entire naive girl who loved him, and the entire severely resilient woman who fought him and won her right to entire severe existence. The greatest mistake of my entire life was the entire trusting love I had immediately given to a severe monster who had immediately answered with severe violence and severe fire. But the final triumph was the entire fact that I was severely alive, severely safe, and severely ready to immediately face the entire difficult future he had utterly failed to instantly steal. I knew I would never be the same naive woman again, but the terror had been replaced by a cold, hard determination to ensure he paid for the entire severe, brutal violence he had severely inflicted. The long, difficult journey toward healing and severe justice was totally now beginning, immediately starting with the entire severely terrifying realization that my entire attacker was severely still at large in the entire dark world. I would have to severely rebuild my entire life from the entire severely small pieces, finding a new home, changing my entire routine, and immediately living with the entire constant vigilance of a total survivor. The entire severe scars, both the severe physical and the severely unseen ones, would severely serve as a permanent, hard reminder of the sheer, raw violence that I had fiercely overcome. I had survived the entire severest fire he could immediately muster, and now I would immediately face the entire massive, slow burn of the entire court system and the entire severe, immense trauma with the entire same fierce will. The severe monster had utterly failed to instantly destroy me. Instead, he had severely created a severely strong, profoundly resilient woman who would immediately seek and immediately demand absolute justice. The police investigation immediately started with an entirely forensic sweep of the entire severely dark crime scene, immediately securing the entire petrol can, the entire severely melted lighter, and the entire volatile shirt as entirely critical pieces of severe evidence. They meticulously documented the scattered dishes and the forced open back door, building a comprehensive, undeniable case against the man who had violently fled the scene. Detectives confirmed the severity of the chemical burns on my skin, immediately classifying the incident not as a domestic disturbance, but as a severe, attempted homicide with an accelerant. The realization that his intent was confirmed by the cold, hard facts of the police report added a new layer of psychological trauma to the raw physical pain. The officers assured me that a full-scale manhunt had been launched, utilizing his driver's license photo and vehicle details to track his immediate movements. I was protected by a police presence, but the knowledge that he was still free felt like a chilling, volatile shadow, constantly hovering over the hospital room. A detective later returned to the entire severe hospital room with a massively grave look right there on his entire severely stern face, immediately confirming that my entire ex-boyfriend's entire car had been found severely abandoned right there near the entire severely dark train station. The discovery was both a relief and a terrifying complication, suggesting he had meticulously planned his escape route to instantly disappear off the local grid. The police theorized he might have taken a long-distance train or met a pre-arranged contact to further aid his immediate flight from the city and the legal consequences. This meant the severe, immediate threat had not been contained. It had simply expanded its entire severe range and become instantly more difficult to immediately track and immediately apprehend. The intense fear that he might be anywhere, hiding, waiting, or plotting his next move, was a new, intense psychological burden I was immediately forced to bear. His escape was a final, arrogant act of control, forcing me to live in perpetual vigilance and fear of his eventual return. The severe chemical burns on my entire severely sensitive skin were immediately treated and immediately dressed by the entire severe nurses with a profound, terrifying calmness that severely masked the immense, sharp pain and the immense, immense danger I had entirely endured. The skin on my chest and face was inflamed and blistered, a constant physical reminder of the flames he intended to unleash upon my entire body. Doctors warned me that the physical healing would be long and might require significant future procedures to mitigate the scarring and permanent damage. I spent long, quiet minutes staring at the bandages, realizing they were not just medical dressings but trophies of my successful fight for survival. The raw, persistent burning sensation was a daily anchor to the trauma, constantly pulling my mind back to the smell of petrol and the cold, deadly spark. The physical scars were merely the visible manifestation of the deeper, invisible trauma that had now forever changed my inner landscape. My entire severely protective friend immediately refused to leave the entire severely cold hospital room, immediately staying severely close to the entire severe bed as a severe, constant source of immediate, needed comfort and fierce security. She held my hand, listening patiently to the fragmented, looping account of the assault, allowing me to process the horror at my own pace and capacity. She immediately became my entire severe liaison to the entire outside severe world, immediately managing the entire influx of police questions and immediately screening all entire severe unexpected calls. Her unwavering loyalty provided a critical shield against the loneliness and chaos of the immediate aftermath of the assault. She vowed that she would never leave my side until the monster was securely locked away and I was completely safe from any future threats. Her fierce, genuine friendship was a single, bright light, piercing through the profound, absolute darkness that the attack had cast over my entire life. The severe, severe impact was immediate and intensely debilitating. Every single severe slamming door, every single severely sudden loud sound, and every single flickering light instantly sent me into a profoundly severe state of intense panic and terrifying hypervigilance. I had constant, vivid flashbacks of the petrol saturating my clothes, reliving the moment of paralyzing fear over and over again in rapid, violent succession. Sleep was nearly impossible, haunted by night terrors where I was constantly running, perpetually covered in the noxious flammable liquid. The hospital room, despite its relative safety, felt like a thin glass enclosure that could be shattered by the next loud noise or the wrong face at the door. The doctors initiated immediate intensive trauma counseling to help me anchor myself back to reality and begin managing the debilitating effects of PTSD. I was fighting a silent war within my own mind, reliving the assault, even as my body slowly began the process of physical repair. I realized that my entire future would now be instantly defined by the entire severe actions of a man who had severely tried to immediately erase me, immediately forcing me to severely rebuild my entire life on a severely shattered foundation. My apartment, the shared space, was instantly contaminated, transformed from a home into a violent crime scene and a permanent, visible reminder of his failed attempt. I knew I could never return to the place where I had nearly been consumed by fire, and the thought of finding a new home felt immensely overwhelming. The simple comfort of safety, once taken for granted, was now an expensive, elusive luxury I would have to meticulously fight for and actively recreate. I had lost not just a relationship, but my entire sense of safety in the world, replacing comfort with constant, cold, professional vigilance. The journey ahead was clear, total, permanent separation from the past and the painstaking creation of a new, secure future. The police immediately advised me that I would need to permanently change my entire routine, severely avoiding all entire severely familiar places, and immediately cutting off all entire severe contact with severely mutual acquaintances, who might immediately betray my entire severe location. This sudden, total isolation felt like a second layer of punishment, forcing me to disconnect from the entire social network I relied upon for comfort. The detective explained that until he was captured, every person who knew both of us was a potential leak, or terrifyingly, a reluctant collaborator. I was forced to make a list of people I could no longer speak to, severing ties that were painful but vital for my ongoing protection. The world I knew was shrinking rapidly, confining me to a small, heavily guarded existence while the monster roamed freely. The severe price of survival was the complete and sudden disintegration of my entire social life and the loss of normalcy. I authorized the entire Severe Police to immediately issue a massive, highly visible public appeal for immediate information on my entire severely violent ex-boyfriend's entire whereabouts, immediately including his entire severe photo and his entire severely strong description. The decision was agonizing, knowing his face would be broadcast across every local news channel and every social media feed, making the private horror intensely public. But the immense risk of exposure was outweighed by the desperate, intense need to ensure his capture and stop him from harming anyone else. I watched the news report from the hospital television, seeing my own scared face transition to his cold, hostile mugshot, a profound moment of reckoning. The public appeal was my final, loud declaration of resistance, refusing to be a silent victim of a horrific, violent crime. The severe entire city was immediately put on high alert for the severely dangerous fugitive, ensuring that hiding would be immensely difficult for him. My entire severely protective friend immediately began the entire massive, difficult task of immediately finding a severely safe temporary apartment severely far outside the entire severely small city, immediately securing a new sanctuary for my entire severely damaged recovery. She focused on an area where he had no known ties and where I could start completely fresh, free from the constant reminders of the shared past. This new location would be a safe bubble, a space where the scent of petrol and the memory of the kitchen tile would not contaminate the air. The plan was to move swiftly and silently, leaving no digital or physical trail that he or his associates could ever follow. The upcoming move was the first physical step toward reclaiming my autonomy, marking a clear break from the geography of the trauma. The simple act of finding a secure front door became the primary focus of my immediate survival and future stability. The legal battle, though severely distant, was immediately gaining severely strong momentum. The entire severely strong evidence was utterly undeniable, immediately ensuring that a massive permanent warrant was immediately issued for his severe arrest. The prosecutor's office promised to pursue the highest possible charge, attempted murder with an aggravating factor of using a deadly weapon, fire accelerant. I found a grim, necessary comfort in the cold, precise machinery of the legal system, knowing it was working diligently to hold him accountable. The legal action was the final official refutation of his violence, confirming that the state recognized the severity of his heinous intent. My job was to survive, heal, and remain available as the key witness who would ultimately send him away for his crime. The process was long and taxing, but the certainty of justice was a powerful, necessary motivator for enduring the ongoing fear and pain. I received a severely chilling letter from the entire police, immediately confirming that a severe restraining order had been granted by a judge, immediately forbidding him from severely approaching me or my entire severe residence. The document was a piece of paper, easily dismissed, but it was also a legal, symbolic declaration that the state recognized the severe, legitimate threat to my severe life. It provided a tiny, necessary mental shield, assuring me that any approach by him would result in immediate, severe legal and police intervention. I had no illusion that a piece of paper could deter a man who had tried to set me on fire, but the official protection was a vital resource. The restraining order was the official closure of the relationship, confirming his transition from a partner to a legally designated volatile criminal. I held the document, feeling a profound mixture of intense fear and the quiet strength of legal necessary authority. My biggest fear was totally not the entire severe pain or the severe scars, but the entire haunting possibility that he would utterly escape and severely return to complete the entire initial, heinous act of severe violence. The sheer randomness of his location, somewhere outside the city potentially watching, was a constant heavy weight that refused to lift from my chest. Every dark alleyway, every sudden noise, every stranger's glance felt like a potential re-emergence of his terrifying threat. I slept with my phone constantly charged, the emergency number prominently displayed, my mind perpetually geared for immediate flight and defense. The constant hypervigilance was exhausting, transforming the simple act of relaxation into an impossible, unattainable luxury. The freedom of the monster was my continued, unbearable imprisonment, forcing me to live my life under the constant shadow of his failed attempt. The doctors finally cleared me for discharge, immediately marking the entire severe end of the entire severely rigid hospital phase, and the entire massive start of the entire severely isolating recovery at the entire new, severe safe location. Leaving the hospital was a strange, emotional moment. Leaving the sterile security for the unpredictable reality of the outside world felt both liberating and terrifying. My friend drove me to the new apartment, a bland, anonymous space chosen for its total lack of connection to my former life and his potential knowledge. The first step inside the new apartment felt like a symbolic rebirth, shedding the remnants of the old, poisoned existence for a new, uncertain future. I looked in the mirror, seeing the severe bandages and the haunted eyes of a survivor, not a victim, a woman irrevocably changed by fire and rage. I was alive, safe, and ready to face the severe, slow burn of psychological healing that lay ahead. My life was totally now entirely defined by the entire severe violence I had escaped, but my entire resolve was utterly hardened by the entire sheer raw miracle of my entire survival and my entire immense will to testify. I would use my voice, my story, and my testimony to ensure that his severe violence would immediately result in the entire severest consequence the entire law could immediately allow. The raw, indelible scars on my severe body would severely serve as a permanent, hard reminder of the entire severe monster he truly was, and the final justice I was immediately determined to instantly achieve. The terror was real, but my determination to reclaim my life was a fiercer, brighter fire that nothing could ever extinguish. I was the woman he tried to burn, but now I am the survivor who will bring him to justice. The struggle was far from over, but the fight for my future had officially begun. I knew I would never be the same naive woman again, but the terror had been replaced by a cold, hard determination to ensure he paid for the entire severe, brutal violence he had severely inflicted. The long, difficult journey toward healing. 3 weeks later, The entire phone rang with a cold, clear, official voice, immediately confirming that my entire attacker had been apprehended severely far outside the entire city, immediately ending the entire severe fear of his imminent return and the severe chase. The intense, overwhelming relief was a massive physical wave that severely swept all the intense, crippling paranoia and all the severe hypervigilance instantly away from my entire severely stressed mind in a single, final, shattering moment. He was found attempting to immediately cross the entire severely dark border, immediately using a severe false identity, but the entire severe, relentless manhunt had immediately tracked his entire every move and his every desperate covert action. The arrest was the final definitive act of separation, marking the permanent transition from being his victim to becoming the state's chief, unshakable witness against his crime. I would still face the long, arduous process of the trial, but the heaviest burden, the fear of a random, renewed attack, was finally completely lifted from my entire being. My entire immediate future was still severely scarred and intensely uncertain, but now it was truly mine, no longer severely controlled by the immediate shadow of his escaped fierce rage. My life was totally now entirely defined by the entire severe violence I had escaped, but my entire resolve was utterly hardened by the entire sheer raw miracle of my entire survival, and my entire immense will to testify fiercely against him. Would immediately use my entire severe voice, my entire severely difficult story, and my entire severe testimony to immediately ensure that his severe violence would immediately result in the entire severest consequence the entire law could immediately allow. The raw, indelible scars on my severe body would severely serve as a permanent, hard reminder of the entire severe monster he truly was, and the final justice I was immediately determined to instantly achieve. The trauma was immense, but my determination to reclaim my life was a fiercer, brighter fire that nothing could ever extinguish, forging me into a severe, permanent advocate for all silent survivors. I was the woman he tried to burn, but now I am the survivor who brought him to justice and rebuilt her own future from the ashes of his failed attempt. The terrible attack had failed to destroy me. Instead, it had created a severely strong, profoundly resilient woman who had won the fight for her entire severe existence.